Disclaimer, this is not just a review, it's a video essay. Please don't watch it looking for a value judgment. Lost Records, Bloom and Rage is a new title from original creators of Life is Strange, Don't Nod. While it doesn't necessarily aim to stand alongside that series, the DNA is absolutely there and definitely felt. Many fans of the Life is Strange series were eagerly anticipating this game, hoping for what they'd call a return to form. Does this game achieve that? Well, I'm gonna do a quick spoiler-free rundown of some of my thoughts, and then there will be full spoilers from then on. This game has a lot of style. I love the UI, I like the visual effects, I like the presentation of the story with a collective reminiscence. The environments are beautiful, there's a lot of stuff to look at, and there's a lot of stuff to film. Speaking of filming, I really enjoyed pointing my camera at stuff and trying to get decent shots. I was going out of my way to tick off as many of those memoirs as possible. The game has a novel and engaging way of presenting choices. Like, new options will appear as people keep talking, you have to look at things to unlock options, and all of the choices happen in real time, giving things a more natural flow and making it feel less video gamey. The game had a lot of charming moments. I especially liked these montage scenes where you would advance it forward and shape it around little choices and prompts. Those were a lot of fun. The graphics are pretty good, but performance is often lacking. Character performances were solid, but not outstanding. The writing was appropriately cringe for the audience and the game's identity, but sometimes felt a little forced. The game had some pretty good audio design and a pretty good soundtrack, although it often felt like there wasn't enough music. This game still has zen moments, but they seemed either surprisingly hard to find or very, very sparse. It seems they rather invested the moments of reflection being mostly contained within the memoir monologues, which is okay. The game moves at a glacial pace, and it is very much focused on the bond between the main group of girls. It took me 7.5 hours to finish. The first tape culminates with a twist that recontextualized the story in an interesting way and made me think about where it might be going. If you liked Life is Strange 2, you'll probably enjoy this. Spoiler-free zone ends here. You've been warned. So you're probably wondering, Leah, how could you possibly talk about this for 25 minutes if you just gave us a whole review? And to that I say, you'll see. If you're familiar with the videos I've made in the past, you might know where this is heading, but if you don't check. It'll be more fun. My feelings on this game are, well, they're not exactly complicated, per se. I'm conflicted, but not so much because of the game itself, more so because of what the game represents. I'm gonna try to break down what I mean. You might not like where I stand, but I'd like it if you heard me out. I played Lost Records Tape 1, and I kinda hated it. Like, a lot, actually. I went into the game with no hype, hoping and expecting to enjoy it. I was enthralled by the first hour or so, and then I wasn't sure if I was even going to finish it. It ended up being one of the worst gaming experiences I've had in a long time. Mind you, I like Life is Strange a lot. Maybe a little too much? Keep in mind that I have only played the game once, and some of my problems could be resolved with the second part coming in April. I love slow-paced media. I like having the space to contemplate and be immersed. I like stories that are character-driven, intimate, reflective bundles of emotion. This game, on paper, should give me exactly what I want. I get to fiddle around with some fun and stylish camcorder gameplay, build relationships with a small cast of characters, and have time to gather my thoughts and get invested. I'd say my biggest gripe with this game is that I feel like I have nothing to latch onto. None of the characters stuck with me, and honestly they're all just super tropey, which can work. Life is Strange did it and it was great, but at this point, it almost feels like Don't Nod is cannibalizing itself. Lost Records' narrative and writing in general felt like a weak imitation of Life is Strange's style, which is weird because it's made by the same studio. The game centers around a supposed tragedy that is destined to come, but we don't know why or when. Main character Swan is essentially Max if she were completely socially inept rather than just somewhat, and obviously dev favorite Nora is basically just Chloe but boring.
You'll never catch me in therapy. My stepmonster.
The primary arc for Swan is to come out of her shell and find confidence in herself. The game's central insect of symbolism is a moth instead of a butterfly. It feels like we're retreading old ground, and not in a fun way. All four girls have practically zero nuance. Their relationships feel shallow and forced, and the whole plot just feels like it's meandering around with no direction. Several scenes could have been significantly shorter, if not cut entirely, and nothing of substance would really be lost. It's just scenes of these girls hanging out and talking about what great friends they are, and then a flash forward to them in the present saying, "Wow, we were such great friends." And then we go back and we do it again.
Oh, God. That was
It's
so
okay.
awkward.
We all had our moments.
Most of these scenes are pretty clearly establishing things, like different prominent locations, but any intrigue that these things might have is quickly swept under the rug. There's no subtlety, nothing engaging, just a box that we point to and say, I wonder what's in it. It started to become incredibly frustrating as the game felt completely averse to saying something. It's like, imagine there's an empty Pringles can sitting in the corner of this cabin. I would press X to reminisce, and the diegetic narration from the present would inform me with the grand revelation that someone likes Pringles. I'd look at a mixtape, a beer bottle, and it'd just be, haha, that's so 90s. It's just giving nothing. This only became worse as many things I could interact with just gave me nothing at all. Not a monologue, not narration, and there's just so much to interact with. It's just impossible to tell what's important. I'm someone who looks at everything in these games. I search every corner of the map. I try to get as many collectibles as I can find, and I explore as many options as I'm able. At the start of the game, I was eager to look around Swan's bedroom and learn about her. I was interested in some of the books she kept, and specifically the writing she hid under her bed. I noticed a theme of disappearing people and insatiable desires. I kept looking, and most of it felt relevant, but once I was done, I just thought, that felt like too much. In this next scene at the movie store, I was still interested in recording different things and ticking off entries for my memoirs. I really enjoyed setting up these shots, and the camera's filters and the general construction of the game world made it feel easy to capture something compelling. As I did this though, the game was pointing me towards Autumn and Nora at this ice cream truck. They kept repeating, "We're closing soon." And I, with my history with these games, anticipated that talking to them would advance the scene. But no, I was wrong. The game surprised me here and told me that I had actually missed my chance. When this happened, I was hooked. I was super invested in how the game might work from here on. My established gameplay loop for this type of game was being thrown out the window, and it was telling me, this world does not revolve around you. It was amazing. Then, I kept looking for things to record, but then it felt like it just never ended. There were so many shots. I wanted to get them all. I wanted to complete all of my memoirs, but there's just too much. Every time you record something, you have to sit there and actually film it for a few seconds. It's not much, but when there's hundreds of things to film, it really adds up and starts to get tiring. The only narrative reward for recording things, at least right now, is the short monologues in each video, which are not nearly as introspective as I'd hoped. Plus, a lot of the time the footage you captured can just totally break your immersion.
It's us! Dude! Whoa.
After my first session, I looked at the collectible count, and I had barely scratched the surface. When I saw that, I gave up on looking for everything. By then, I already thought the game was feeling really slow, and I was not about to slow it down even more. The way the game presents choices is really fun. I especially like how sometimes you'll be flooded with choices as Swan's mind races. But as the game went on, I started to really dislike how hard it was to tell when something actually mattered. Most of your choices will tick your relationship points up or down with a given character, and sometimes it's really difficult to tell how much of an effect it has. Sometimes you make a choice that seems completely harmless, and then somehow someone takes it completely personally. There's moments like declining to participate in the Blood Pact and not completing the Bloody Mary scene that have no apparent consequences. On one hand, it's engaging and realistic to have choices with unclear repercussions, but at the same time, I couldn't tell what effect that even had on the game. My lowest relationship was with Kat, and to be honest, I didn't care. Like, at all. I didn't like her attitude from the beginning, and every time I had Swan just act like herself, it would harm the relationship. I had no interest in seeing more from her, because I found her boring. The end of the tape changed my mind and made me understand her better, but at the same time, it was unbelievably frustrating to literally be interviewing her, asking her a question that might give me some compelling insight into her character, and I'm told that off-screen she said I wasn't allowed to ask those types of questions. It's annoying. Hi, I'm coming in from editing just to say that I went back and saw some of the scenes with Kat that I had previously skipped, and I now think that she's my favorite character in the game. I still don't like her very much and think she's pretty bland, but now I just really regret some of the choices that I made. The game forces you to make a sacrifice on one of them, and it really limits your ability to understand the characters. That being said, these scenes with Kat didn't really teach me anything new, but they let me experience more of her character and a more charming side that I had previously missed. My highest relationship was with Nora, because despite me not liking her, she was the only one who seemed to have any strong character, and that character was just being a lesbian. That kind of goes for all of them, actually. The game really loves to be like, haha, they're closeted lesbians. Despite going out of my way to spend time with her and try to appeal to her, I learned absolutely nothing new about her. Then, in the present, she was being avoidant and not wanting to talk about the past. I tried to talk to her about why, and it hurt our relationship. Understandable, but incredibly frustrating when I'm just desperately trying to get anything interesting. The only major things that happened were the forming of a blood pact, a mysterious abyss opening in the woods, and the reveal that Kat has cancer. And it took 7 hours to get there. Compare this to the first game, where within the first 15 minutes, we discover Max not only has rewind powers, but we also have the other narrative hook that Nathan Prescott is doing some shady things on campus. Then, not long after that, Max is reunited with Chloe, and we're caught up on their relationship. Then we're introduced to Chloe's home conflict. Then Chloe almost dies multiple times. The Rachel Amber problem is brought to the forefront, and episode 3 culminates with Max jumping into the past and saving Chloe's dad from dying. Life is Strange never worked because it was mundane. It worked because it managed to balance the mundane with its insane, over-the-top, world-shattering shenanigans. These moments are okay. As they were happening, I thought they were just Kat being wildly overdramatic and everyone else being stupid, but now I see that the point is Kat is dying and pulling everyone else into self-destruction. Still though, the execution of these scenes makes it not land at all for me. Half of them hinge on one scene of one guy being an over-the-top dickhead, which I immediately called that he would be given some sympathetic reasoning for his behavior. I've played these games before. These scenes with Corey are just, I hate it. I really hate it.
Great. Not again.
Jeez. What's up, dykes?
It's the 90s, so he's casually bigoted. This guy's mean. Do you get it?
You look like a fucking whore.
Do you get it?
Turn it off, fatty!
He's a bad guy.
He's sick.
Just kidding. This type of writing just hurts me. Plus, a lot of the most pivotal scenes in this game involve this song that Kat wrote. And guys, this song stinks. When I heard she submitted it to a poetry contest, I said, if they win, I'm actually going to close the game. And then they won. The game gets an excuse because it's implied to be for supernatural reasons, but seriously? Then they performed it in front of the bar and I wanted to die.
Put up the red flag that you would be a fucking drag.
This sounds awful and they're making a fool of themselves. My secondhand embarrassment was just eating me alive. It seems like that's kind of the point, but as it stands right now, I can't take anything from it. If the point is that teenagers are rebellious and stupid and awkward, what do I get from that? The story hasn't said anything about it yet. It just showed it. The moment there was something compelling, it ended. I want to see where it goes because it could end up really interesting, but right now? Oh my god, I hate this. The game has style, but no substance. The environments are beautiful, but empty of anything of value. The game looks good, but the characters look uncanny. The audio design is solid, but it's mixed terribly and doesn't feel immersive at all. Also, the characters are constantly interrupting each other, and Swan takes these long breaths at the start of every line. Okay, here I go. Sorry, I'll stop. The game has fun mechanics that aren't used to their full potential. The writing in the world is full of pointless bloat. I don't like it. Is Lost Records bringing us back to what made Life is Strange great? I don't think so. I think it lacks the intrigue, the novelty, and the emotion of Life is Strange. It feels empty, and to stand alongside something as full to bursting as Life is Strange is just... it doesn't sit right with me.
Shut the fuck up already!
To be honest, I don't like complaining that much, but I did it for a reason. If you heard me complain about this game and now you hate me, that was the intended response. My honest opinion is that I didn't like this game, but I can see why plenty of other people would like it. The writing style and the characters don't resonate with me, but maybe they do for you. You might think I'm totally wrong about Lost Records, and if so, awesome. Tell me about it. I want to know more. If there's something you think I missed, tell me what it is, and I will try to understand it. I want to like this game. It seems really cool and really interesting, but it just didn't work for me. So tell me why it worked for you. We'll see if I can change my mind. I gave you my full perspective on this game, and now I want to ask you a question. Did you like Double Exposure?
Wait, what the fuck? Are you serious?
If you're the person I described, someone who vehemently disagrees with my opinions on Lost Records, I'd wager that you don't. This is why I want to talk about this game. Not because people like it and I don't, but because there is an obvious bias here that needs to be called out. Look at these reviews. 0.9 hours, 0.5 hours at review time, 2.2 hours on record, 1.8 at review time. I know, there's no point in getting upset over Steam reviews, but Many of these are reflective of many people in the wider community. This is what Double Exposure should have been, a claim made after seeing not much more than the title drop. Deck 9 ruined Life is Strange. Double Exposure sucks. This is what Life is Strange is really about. And to that I say, why don't we start over? Life is Strange Double Exposure is the new title from Deck 9, inheritor of the Life is Strange franchise. Many fans were eagerly anticipating the game, hoping to see the return of their favorite characters. The game seeks to reflect on the first and show us the after effects of it. Does this game succeed? Well, let's talk about it. My feelings on this game are complicated. On one hand, it's one of my favorite stories ever told in a game, and on the other, it's deeply flawed, messy, and unfinished. You might not like where I stand, but I'd like it if you heard me out. I played Double Exposure, and I kinda loved it. Like, a lot, actually. I went into the game with no hype, expecting it to suck, only playing it out of curiosity. But it ended up being what I would call maybe the closest to a perfect sequel the original Life is Strange could have asked for. The first 3 chapters are like a snowball tumbling down a hill. The game stumbles in Chapter 4, but it comes back around for a strong Chapter 5 that unfortunately couldn't land on its feet. Despite that, I've played the game 4 times. I've watched 3 other complete playthroughs. I've taken notes. I've seen pretty much every different dialogue branch and every different outcome. And I'm still not tired of it. Keep in mind, I wasn't really that into Life is Strange before this. I knew a lot about the first game, but it had been a while since I engaged with it, and I didn't have any strong feelings about it. That being said, I do have some nostalgia for it. I remember watching people play it when it came out, when I was younger. After I played Double Exposure, I went back and played Life is Strange. Twice. I really like it now. It's a weird and confused game, but I love it anyway. My favorite thing about Double Exposure is how precise it is. Every little bit of writing is brilliantly efficient and multifaceted. With surprising subtlety and speed, the game is able to communicate so much without you even noticing what's happening. Characters begin as somewhat predictable archetypes, but unfold like origami. Similar to the first game, you learn that nobody is what they seem, and everyone has something going on under the hood. And what's going on under the hood is often related to the first game. This creates an experience that undoubtedly feels like Life is Strange, but a little more muted, more mature. A big part of Life is Strange's identity is feeling cinematic. If the first game is a TV show, Double Exposure is a film. The first game is naive, big, and grand, a storm that keeps on building. It escalates and escalates and escalates until reality is being torn apart by the seams. So where do you go from there? You have 2 options. Go even bigger or shrink it down. Double Exposure went with the latter, which I think was the correct choice. With an ending like the first game had, that introduces a lot of very small-scale problems. How does Max cope with the loss of Chloe, or the dark room? How does Chloe ever move on from Arcadia Bay? How does Max? How does the relationship survive with that weight? Double Exposure answers these questions, albeit not perfectly, but in a way that I think fits its small, understated, mature nature. The game centers around an all-too-familiar story. Max is at a prestigious art school, her best friend dies, she discovers she has time powers, and it culminates with a secretly evil teacher and a massive nightmare storm. Max is herself, but grown up and damaged. Obvious Deb favorite Amanda is like Chloe, but not terrible.
Let's thrash, Dr. Okay.
Bitchy women are a huge turn on, so.
Oh?
The game's central flying creature of symbolism is an owl rather than a butterfly. We're retreading old ground, and it's very much on purpose. The game gives you this subtle sense of deja vu that doesn't just trigger your nostalgia, but also connects you to the experience Max is going through without it ever needing to be completely explained. The characters are amazingly fleshed out, with a few exceptions. The relationships have strong foundations and a surprising amount of layers. My favorite example is Amanda, who, as I talked about in my last video, has a significant, understandable, and complex relationship with Max despite having less than an hour of combined screen time across all choice paths. Every time we talk to someone, we learn something new. Dialogue is snappy and witty. It's full of meaning and subtext. Scenes sometimes communicate with no words at all. I love it. Chapter 3 of Double Exposure is maybe the best singular episode in the entire Life is Strange series. Its only real competition is maybe episode 4 from Life is Strange 1. Chapter 3 is so good. The way it builds intrigue and all of its different emotional payoffs are just so good in a way that only this game would be able to do. In a previous video, I said that the moment Double Exposure got me was with the motel scenes in Chapter 5, but that's actually not true. The real moment that got me was this scene in Chapter 3. The moment I saw this, I understood what the game was doing, and then the rest of it just all clicked together for me. The more attention I paid to the game, the more it said. Every time I thought something might mean something, it did. Every object, every design detail, every song, it all worked in unison to support the game's vision. Loneliness, trauma, grief, it all comes through in a beautiful way. It's almost like poetry. The only time that ever felt wasted was occasional moments between conversations and weak moments of gameplay. While most things were fun and worth looking for, sometimes it misses. Like, there's a lot of random side conversations you can listen to, and while they can be thematically relevant, they're poorly acted and they're really drawn out and hard to sit through. The core of Double Exposure is a really personal and intimate story about Max overcoming trauma. Safi's death triggers a severe episode of PTSD, and the events that follow only continue to make Max remember. Feelings of guilt and isolation fester inside her until she ultimately confronts her trauma directly and is able to start moving on. This journey ripples out and echoes from the other major characters. Amanda leads Max to healing and change. Finn offers camaraderie or destruction. Safi makes Max confront her mistakes and learn on her own. Everyone is on their own journey, and their endings hinge on the player's ability to make responsible choices. The game not only makes Max reflect, but you too. There's still the obvious elephant in the room of the ending, and don't get me wrong, the ending has problems. When you approach it from a plot standpoint, it seems kind of weird and unresolute, but when you approach it from a thematic and character standpoint, it's actually the perfect way to end the game. The ending perfectly encapsulates the game's philosophy, and all of the stuff hidden beneath the surface of it is really interesting and really complex. The main plot leaves a lot of questions unanswered. This doesn't bother me too much, but I understand why others have a problem with it. To me, the game feels pretty well-rounded with Max's final character resolution at the end of the game, and I see all of the plot points as a means to an end. I've also found that many things were meant to be addressed but ended up being cut due to either running out of budget or dev time. For example, there's supposed to be a challenge to hide the photo at the start of Chapter 3 so Alderman wouldn't see it, but the prompt had to be cut, and the cutscene we see is the fail scene. Alderman was supposed to appear in the storm in Chapter 5, where you'd likely be able to save him, or maybe he'd never have died if he didn't see the photo. There's a good handful of cut content, but unfortunately there's no way to see it, as Unreal Engine doesn't include unused files in its exports. Regardless, even without data mining, Chapters 4 and 5 are evidently a whole hour shorter than the rest, and definitely feel like they're missing content. Because they are. At the Krampus party, you can see this on a whiteboard. You were supposed to be able to do these things. There's scenes in the files about pinning the tail on different characters and taking and leaving gifts for White Elephant. Krampus is the most underbaked scene in the game, and it was supposed to be so much more. It's really unfortunate. Even still, with as broken and unfinished the game is, the most important stuff is there, and I think it's pretty great. The characters are fun, they're dynamic, they're well acted. The animation, the soundtrack, all of the artistry on display is just amazing. There's a lot of evocative imagery and strong symbolism. The emotional core of Double Exposure is evident, potent, and fully realized. Is it perfect? No, nothing's perfect, but it's perfect for me. Okay, so why did I talk about all this? Because I want you to understand. My point is not to say anything like, Double Exposure is better than Lost Records, even if I might agree with that. My point is that games are works of art, and art doesn't always affect people in the same ways. Do I mean to suggest that you can't criticize art? Absolutely not, but critiquing art requires you to make an effort, and that's something that I think the internet is often lacking. No effort to engage, to understand, hell, to even really have a reason. Maybe I just don't get Lost Records, and that's fine, but I definitely get Double Exposure. What I ask is that you extend the same courtesy. If you don't get it, fine. The only thing that Double Exposure did was try something new and fall victim to the same issues in the video game industry that have existed for decades. It's things like this toxicity, this villainization. There's an obvious problem here of people not just failing, but refusing to even try to understand the art that is making them feel so passionately. The art that was made for them. Calling a game like Double Exposure slop is something so evidently wrong to anybody who gives the game even the tiniest bit of credit. There's so much passion here, and there's so much substance here. To say it was just some cash grab slop is just, it's embarrassing. This game has been review bombed, it's been unfairly criticized, it's been dragged through the mud, and even the diamonds in its heart couldn't shine through. People lost their jobs. The franchise is stuck in limbo, its fate held in the hands of the greedy corporations that forced the game out too soon, who forced a cat to cost $30 fucking dollars. Even if we get a next game, it might not have any of the people working on it that made Double Exposure something beautiful, something I care about. The final choice of Double Exposure has Max choose either to refuse or accept to stand with Safi. Safi, spiteful, angry, ready to perpetuate a cycle of abuse and trauma. Every sign points back to the past. Up on a cliff, by a lighthouse. Who will Max choose? You all picked wrong. Deck 9 didn't ruin Life is Strange. You did. Thanks for watching.